A lot of people picked Albedo for their free constellation given the fact he got buffs this patch, so let's look at 12 teams for a C1 Albedo. His C1 gives him extra defense, which is skill damage, and his buffs for the team scale off. So if you haven't heard, Venti's a DPS now. His normals are converted into animo damage, and they increase the duration of his burst by 1 second, up to a total of 2 seconds. When his burst is active, on-fielders that trigger a swirl reaction have their damage increased by 50%, and Venti's burst will deal more damage. Let's talk about Albedo's buffs too. When there are 2 Hex and Circle characters in the team, Albedo's skill essentially creates a ghost version of itself. This means it can't be destroyed by enemies. Also, he buffs the team's normal attack, charge attack, plunge attack, skill, and burst damage by 4% for every 1000 defense he has, up to a maximum of 12%, so 3000 defense. For other Hex and Circle characters, it is 10% damage for every 1000 defense, up to a maximum of 30%. His skill damage is also buffed by the ghost flowers I mentioned earlier. Doran's given us an extra source of damage and resistance shred. Bennett is... Bennett. No buffs for him, which probably doesn't come as a surprise. Here's the same team, but with Venti out for Arlecchino. Bennett is buffing both Doran and Arlecchino here, but if you needed more pyro application for specific boss shields like the New World boss, you can swap him out for another off-field pyro units like Xiangling. Arlecchino can't use his healing anyway, but given the fact he was only given attack to 2 characters, having an extra damage dealer in Xiangling to take advantage of Albedo's buff and Doran's shred isn't that much worse. It's worth noting too that Doran's weapon gives the on-fielder 28% attack when there are 2 Hexarai characters, so on-field attack scale is like Arlecchino benefits a lot from him if you're going for his weapon. Electro on-fielders are also an option. Take Veressa for example, throw Yansan in there and you've got a nice overloaded team with a bit of off-field geo damage. Chevrus is going to be better in most situations given the fact she is tailored towards overloaded, but there will be situations where you want some geo damage. A lot of people were hoping Chevrus would be on Doran's banner, but given the fact she's not, Albedo's not a bad alternative here for those that don't have her. Of all the teams in the video, this one felt the strongest. I didn't know if it would work because of all the pyro application potentially messing with blooms, but for a random bullshit go team, it was one of the better ones I've played. Farina's an option over Albedo, but if you find the lack of healer a little risky with Farina's bleed, you can use Albedo instead. He's going to trigger the Hexarai buffs, his burst gives the team elemental mastery, and you might even get some crystallized shards for resistance to interruption. With Farina or Albedo, I'd go with Doran's white mode, but if you want to go for more comfort with Shalonen instead of Lauma, you can use Doran in dark mode for his vape damage. Ito's been out of the meta for a long time, and to be honest, I still think he will be, but this patch is definitely a win for him. Not only is Albedo getting buffs, but Doran is an almost perfect option for the last slot in Ito teams. Doran is an extra source of damage, but he's also shredding the opponent's geo resistance to make both Ito and Albedo deal more. Ito is quite weak relative to other DPSs, but now we can grab a constellation for free. His C1 gives him more stacks for his charge attacks, which will help bridge the gap a little. Sticking with Geo, let's have a look at Navia. You can of course use Doran and Bennett instead of Fischl and Xingqiu, but it's nice to use different units. I always like using teams without a sustain specialist and instead getting your sustain from supports like we do here. Xingqiu has damage mitigation and a little bit of healing, then we've also got crystallized shards too. I didn't try Mona in an Ether, so maybe that'll be better. I wasn't sure if there'd be enough Hydro application, but if you tried it, let me know what you think. I don't use Navia often, so it was nice to play her again. I think if she'd have been starved of playtime any longer, she'd have been on her way to see Malus and Silver. Talking of dead friends, we have this Xiao team. We need another Hexarai character, so I've gone with Doran. You could use Venti for his 50% animo damage bonus. You could also use Mona, although you won't have full uptime on her Omen buff, even with it having a longer duration now. It was definitely a throwback using Albedo with Xiao, believe it or not, we used to run them with Jean and Zhongli. This team is dealing a lot more damage though, but the lack of sustainability did make it awkward to play. I could swap out Farazan for Bennett or Xianyun, but if we're not going to use Farazan in the one niche she has, when are we going to use her? Seeing as though we're in Nodcry at the moment, I figured I'd get another Nodcry unit in here with an Ether. From a lore perspective, it's a rare team in that there's not a single regular human in here. From a playstyle perspective, it's fun in that we have 4 different damage dealers, buffs from Albedo, an elemental mastery buff to Nouvelette's from a Nether, and shred from Doran. On top of this, we're also maxing out Nouvelette's passive, which wants different reactions in the team for more charged attack damage. It's also comfy with a resistance to interruption from Ineff's shield and the crystallized shards. Albedo and Doran is my personal favourite Doran pair, but it's nice that Neuvillette synergizes with them and then leaves the last slot open for a flex. Mualani's gonna pair well with Doran. We've got Shalonen as the healer for rebuffs and shred, and then you can go with either of Mona or Albedo in the flex slot. Mona gives HP from Hydro Resonance as well as a Roman buff. Albedo gives another source of damage and an Elemental Mastery and damage buff. Mualani is designed to be a hyper carry, but I think it's nice to have a Mualani team where not all the damage comes from her, because sometimes they let Glory from Mondstadt decide where the burst lands. Given the fact Klee got some buffs and has a lore connection to Albedo, let's look at her next. Her charged attacks are stronger now, and her normal attack string is less clunky, so she'll be a lot more fun to play. I wouldn't advise pulling her unless you really like the character, but I think buffing Klee was a good idea. It's only fair that those that pulled her get to play her. The Hex and Circle buffs for almost all characters are useful for Klee because it just gives her more team building options, whereas previously she didn't have many and there were better alternatives to her in all of them. Doran is better than Xiangling here, but we want to show people that you don't need him to get value out of your Albedo. As always, you can use Bennett instead of Xiangling too. I put out a Doran video where I showcased a Knight team there. If you haven't seen it, punch yourself in the face. It was this exact team but with Emily instead. Not everyone has Emily though, because a lot of people skipped her to save for Natlan characters. By the time she had a rerun, we had Archons twatting enemies on the head with a massive motorbike, and Emily wasn't as powerful relative to the meta ceiling anymore. I still play her, and I think she definitely still has value with Knight, but I can understand completely if you skipped her the second time as well. Albedo's a solid alternative and gives us the Hexarai synergy, so Doran can shred resistance by 35% instead of 20%. For the last team, I just wanted to throw a bunch of Hexarai characters in there, but given the fact we don't have a healer yet, I figured I'd use Shalonen to showcase how strong a pair her and Albedo are. I enjoyed playing Mona on field here. Given the fact she's been underwhelming for nearly 5 years, the Hexarai buffs make her almost feel like a new character. For a score out of 10, I'd give a C1 Albedo an 8.5. I think they made him a lot more flexible, he deals more damage, gives buffs to the team. I wouldn't call him S tier, but I don't think he needs to be. Hexarai teams with Albedo will be enough for almost all endgame content. I just put out guides for Columbina, Zebai, Doran and Venti, and I'm gonna do some more too. Maybe Mona next. If you haven't seen it yet, I do recommend watching my Columbina video because we're getting Luna Crystallize in the next patch and Columbina is going to pair well with Albedo for it. There should be a link to it on screen round about now, but I'll also leave a pinned comment with a link to it. We're also getting a Luna Crystallize support for free and he's going to pair well with Albedo, so I'm going to do a video for him soon too. Subscribe if you want to see those, also join my Discord if you want to show off your pulls, and take it easy.